Hi everyone, this is Samit from TalksonGround. Welcome to the show. So the reason I thought I will do this podcast is because the global situation is really dire, and there are multiple hotspots in the world. And the most important, the most adjacent to India is Bangladesh. As you know, on 5th of August, Sheikh Hasina, the Prime Minister, was deposed. She fled to India. She has come on a flight to India. Right now, she's somewhere in the New Delhi area, and she's under the protection of the Indian government. Now, this is not the only hotspot in the world. There is the Iran-Israel conflict going on, and there is a chance that it'll escalate further. There is the chance that there will be a strike by Iran on Israel. Then there's the Ukraine-Russia conflict. There is the China, Philippines, Taiwan, Japan quadrangle going on. So there is a full-on or full-blown uh, turmoil in the world, and I'm not even mentioning India, Pakistan, or India, China. So there is a lot of things going on, and I think for India to come out of it safe and for us to prosper as a country and as for every country, we need to resolve some of these issues. But before we resolve them, we need to understand what's going on. So the reason Bangladesh becomes so important is because it borders India. It is contiguous with Indian borders. There's no other country that borders it. And but it does open out to the Bay of Bengal. It is a reasonably big-sized economy with $400 billion. It has 17 crore people living there. And we all know the history in 1971, what happened. It was initially a part of Pakistan. Now, the turmoil in Pakistan itself is a big problem, but the Bangladesh issue is a major security threat for India, and and that's the reason that the government has really taken this seriously, and they better do. The reason is because from the time India held the G20, there have been attempts by many people in the world, especially the West, to kowtow to its what it wants to do with Bangladesh. They're not very happy with the Bangladesh regime the way it was because it was not allowing uh, it was not allowing the Americans to have a naval base there. America having a naval base right next uh, to our ports and our sea and our cities is a major problem for us. So it's not as if we can change uh, the geography, but we can change the way the West deals with India and the way people are looking at the situation. So before we go into the current issue, we have to start looking at where did this start. So this started really in September last year, though it has a history before that. But primarily it started with the Americans pushing Sheikh Hasina to resign by November 30th. This was well reported, and there were elections to be held in Bangladesh. And those elections, there was a lot of controversy, and the opposition party, led by Khalida Zia, was basically, in a way, pushed out of the contest. Now, you might not understand or know about the Bangladeshi politics, but basically it's Khalida Zia versus Sheikh Hasina politics. And there was a time when Khalida Zia was in power and a military coup had happened, and then later on Hasina came to power. Uh, in the geopolitical context, Sheikh Hasina has been a friend to India. So therefore, uh, this area becomes very important for us. It's very close to the chicken neck. There's a narrow passage that divides India and China and sorry, Bangladesh and China, and there's a very small piece of land. So, from a geopolitical standpoint, from a geographical standpoint, from an internal security standpoint, from an economic standpoint, Bangladesh thriving is in India's interest. Um, there is a lot of radicalism that is happening in Bangladesh, and that has spilled over into India from West Bengal and Assam and so on. We all know those histories, but this video is more focused on the geopolitical contest or context, and it is a contest. So there is speculation on social media whether this was done by China, whether US was involved or Pakistan was involved. And some people think all three have collaborated. Now the question is, what do they want? And why did it happen? Well, for one, the naval base is one that I mentioned. The other is that obviously the Americans were very keen to have their own company set up base in Bangladesh. And remember, Bangladesh has been given preferential treatment by EU and the US and even China, and that is why textile industry in Bangladesh is very big and it's thriving or was thriving until COVID. And therefore, there's an economic reason as well, apart from strategic reasons. Now, what can India or what can this situation evolve into? And how will it go forward from here? That's something we can discuss later. But what really happened is that when G20 happened, uh, Biden met with Hasina and they were all smiles and they nice pictures were clicked. But there are some dissidents, meaning basically Khalida's party supporters who are actually in the US and they are in close touch with the Democrats and they have been trying to oust Hasina for a very long time. She was in power for 15 years. Now, what has happened is that they wanted her out. She didn't agree, and allegedly, with Indian help, she managed the elections and came to power. As I said, for India, it's very important to keep her in power and ensure that in our backyard there is no another Pakistan type of state uh, created. Because all the conditions that exist in Pakistan are starting to exist in Bangladesh. For instance, there's an internal power struggle. There is high rise of radicalism, and there are some internal threats, and a lot of sleeper cells are there that are supported by ISI and MSS and CIA and so on. So all of these things are coming together to form a very, very dangerous tinderbox kind of situation in Bangladesh. So she came to power, but from January to June, things were looking all right, and India and Bangladesh were very happy that they managed to ward off the pressure. But then started a student protest, which was really uh, protesting a certain reservation judgment by the Supreme Court of Bangladesh. And the issue mirrors completely what happened with uh, Manipur. And remember, Manipur and Bangladesh are very close by. Now, in Manipur, before I go further, I need to talk about Manipur as well. Manipur, there is a so-called conflict between Meiteis and Kukis. Meiteis are both of these are ethnic groups that are indigenous to Manipur and have been there for ages. And Meiteis are primarily Hindu, and Kukis are primarily now Christians. But there are other communities. There are Muslim Meiteis and there are Christian or other Hindu Kukis as well. And then there are Nagas. Now, this conflict is really spilling over from Myanmar, and Myanmar is having a civil war going on with lot of players, including China and the US. Now, what has happened is that the um, whole situation in Manipur was such that Sheikh Hasina, I think in May or something, she made a very, 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 very odd statement for a head of state. She said that there was a country that was trying to create a Christian country, taking some parts away from Bangladesh and some parts away from India and some parts away from Myanmar. And that country would kind of straddle all this location and be a launch pad into China. So that is what set the bells ringing, because you don't make statements like that. And from then on, the protest started. The protests were really against the reservations. Now, the reason I brought up Manipur is because that is exactly what happened in Manipur. In Manipur, a court declared that Meiteis can also have reservation, and the protest started from the Kukis, who live in the hills, while Meiteis live in the valley. So a similar thing happened in Bangladesh, and Bangladesh, unfortunately or whatever, has gone down very hard uh, into the protesters. Many have died very sadly. And now the situation has become even terrible because there is a lot of bloodshed happening on the streets. And what was Oust Sheikh Hasina campaign has now become a pogrom against the minority Hindus. Now, I don't want to take up cudgels only on that issue right now, but the fact is that there is reporting in India about it, and a couple of correspondents from the UK have reported this, but this is not carried by any other news media. And there is a lot of pushback coming from within Bangladesh also, but then the media is not covering it. And there is a lot of killing and looting and so on going on. So that's a very difficult situation because a lot of refugees can come into India, and to identify who is who and who is radicalized, who is not radicalized, who is working on behalf of, say, ISI, we don't know. So Indian government is caught in a big fix now. There is a possibility that India will take military action, but that's what the G2, the Americans and the Chinese are wanting to happen. So they would want a war that happens on the Indian border, and they can then create a Ukraine-like situation in Bangladesh. There are parallels with Ukraine, and I will put the link in the description. So there's this gentleman from Europe. I forget his name, Andrew something. So he mentions that there are clear parallels between the way Sheikh Hasina was ousted and the way in which the Ukraine Maidan uprising happened. So these two situations are very similar. And going forward, what we are hearing is that Mohammed um, Yunus, who is who was awarded the Nobel Prize for his work in the commercial banking sector, as in cooperative banking, he is going to be the interim prime minister. Now, remember, he is a well-regarded intellectual, especially in the US, and the US is very happy that he will be in power. Now, this has major security implications for India. This can create a lot of problems, and if this comes true, then it's not a good situation for China as well. So you could see a very funny situation where India and China could work together in Bangladesh, and Pakistan and US on the other side. So this situation is so explosive that this can create a war-like situation. The civil war has already started. There can be a naval base next to Indian waters. So all of this is a major concern. Uh, so this was my basic um, introduction to the Bangladesh situation. Now, if we come to the Iran-Israel conflict, now that is a uh, major flashpoint as well. So the Hamas leader Haniyeh was assassinated at his home in Iran, and that has created a lot of pressure on the Iranian regime to kind of start some sort of a campaign against Israel, because it will not look good for the Iranians not to give a response to this kind of killing. And remember, Israel has also carried out a lot of killing in against Hezbollah. Now, just for people who don't understand this, Hamas is basically Sunni, while Hezbollah is Shia. And so there are some ethnic differences, and Iran is primarily Shia, but it supports the Sunni Hamas against Israel. So there is a chance that Iran will strike back against Israel. There is also a chance that Iran and Israel will have a deal wherein Iran will fire some missiles and there will be some protests, some strike here and there, and everything will calm down. But I must say that the kind of things that are happening in the Middle East gives rise to some fear. And this is where I want to bring in two more points. The oil prices have fallen sharply this year and they're down 10%. And then there is this whole point about the upsurge in the gold prices. Typically, when these two things are happening concurrently or even in inverse proportions, especially when oil and gold are rising together, it does signal conflict in the world which is coming up or which is going to happen. So there is a lot, um, there's a lot going on. And the moment Iran goes to war, if it happens to go to war, the problem will be that India will have a economic issue because the oil price can spike. The moment the oil price spikes, there will be a problem with the way uh, we manage our economy. There can be inflation that comes in and so on. So that is why I think the Iran-Israel conflict is also important. And remember, when G20 happened, India started an initiative wherein there will be a trade corridor going from India to Saudi Arabia onto Israel and from there onto Greece and so on. So this is a major uh, uh, s- issue as far as India is concerned. And again, if there is a conflict, India will have to choose between Israel and Iran, the way it was put under pressure to choose between Russia and Ukraine. And again, so India would be under pressure to kind of do some sort of uh, juggling or balancing. And this is not going to be good because we already have one juggling going on with Russia, Ukraine, and then you have juggling with the Bangladeshi border, and then you have one in the Iran-Israel border. So I must say the reason I'm doing this live today is because this is a crucial month. How things go in Bangladesh can decide the future of the subcontinent, the Indian subcontinent for a while. Remember, 50 years back, 53 years back, Bangladesh won freedom from Pakistan. And at that time, the US was really against